This is the first time in a long time that I've been mic'd. Usually the congregation I'm used to is so small I don't really have to have a microphone. I can just boom out and people hear me at least decently enough. I want to thank you all. You've all been very wonderful to me as I've come here, and I've only ever loved 3 congregations, and I say that now because this one is the 3rd, and I'm very happy to be here. You've made me fall in love with this area, and I love working with Mike, and it's just been a tremendous blessing here to be with you all. And I want to ask you this morning, has it ever been too much for you? Has there ever been a point in your life when you've been living as a Christian, that you just can't do it anymore? For whatever reason, for whatever situation you find yourself in your life, you want to give up praying to God. It may be that you're tired of asking for the same sin to be forgiven and removed from you over and over and over again. And it may be that for whatever reason, your situation in life is not what you would want it to be. And you've asked God time and time again for it to be removed from you, for you to be put in a different situation. And He, each time, has been silent. Why won't God listen? There are times when we relate to Psalm 88. If you haven't turned there already, go ahead and look at it now. It opens up, "O Lord, God of my salvation, I cry out day and night before you. Let my prayer come before you. Incline your ear to my cry, for my soul is full of troubles, and my life draws near to Sheol. I'm counted among those who go down to the pit. I'm a man who has no strength, like one set loose among the dead, like the slain that lie in the grave, like those whom you remember no more, for they are cut off from your hand." And you get to that verse and you think, well, it's supposed to get better. This is a psalm and they get better as they go on, and there's always some kind of resolution at the end. But if you look at the very last verse, verse 18, it says, "You have caused my beloved and my friend to shun me. My companions have become darkness." Psalm 42, verse 9 says, "I say to God, my rock, why have you forgotten me?" If you're feeling like this, you can know that you're not alone, and you can have confidence in that. You're not the only one throughout the entire history of the book that feels like that, and I'm not the only one that feels like that. And we think that when we know all of these things, that God is a just God, and we know that in Philippians 4 and verse 6, Paul says, "But in everything with prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving in your heart, let your requests be made known to God." And we've done that. We've followed His will in that way. And in 1 Peter 5 and verse 7, we know that it says, "Cast your cares upon Him because He cares for you." But I don't feel very cared for. And you know that Jesus Himself told us in Matthew 7 and verse 11, "If you being evil know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven know how to give good things to you if you ask Him?" So we know God's a just God, and we believe that because that's what the book says, and we trust the book, but still we're left alone, and we wonder why. Well, more often the problem isn't on Him. Maybe there's some things that I have to think about, and I need to examine in my life to determine if for some reason He's choosing to be silent because of something I've let affect my life. In 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 11, Peter's talking to husbands and wives, and he says to the husbands in verse 7, he says in verse 7 that husbands, you ought to live with your wife in an understanding way, showing honor to them. They are heirs with you in the grace of life. And in the last part of that verse is what we want to focus on. The last part of verse 7. That your prayers may not be hindered. And we know that our prayers can be hindered by unrighteousness, by not following the will of God. Ezekiel chapter 8 is a place we can look. Ezekiel's sitting in his house with the elders of Israel, and all of a sudden, he sees a vision. God comes to him, he grabs a lock of Ezekiel's hair, and he takes him all over Jerusalem, and he says, see what they're doing over here, see the abominations that they've done. They've rejected me completely. And in the final verse 17 and verse 18, he says, because of this, I'm not going to listen to them. I'll send my wrath. I'll act in my anger. I'll return to them what they've earned. And when they cry to me, I'm not going to listen because they didn't listen to me. In Jeremiah, he says the same thing to the prophet Jeremiah in chapter 7. And again in chapter 14, he says, don't you dare pray for these people. Don't trouble yourself. Don't waste your words. I won't listen to you because they haven't listened to me. They haven't done what I've asked them to do. It makes sense. I mean, I can't expect you to listen to me if I don't listen to you. I wouldn't expect to listen to you if you didn't also listen to me. And how much more would God, who we're supposed to follow, not listen to us if we don't pay attention to Him? You know, in Proverbs chapter 15 and verse 8, go ahead and look at that. Solomon says, the sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but the prayer of the upright is acceptable to Him. And in verse 29, the Lord is far from the wicked, but He hears the prayer of the righteous. So if I feel alone, if I feel like God hasn't been listening to me, if I've prayed time and time again for this one thing to happen and it never has happened, maybe it's because my heart's not in the right place. You know, Colossians 3, 1 through 4, where he says, set your hearts on things that are above. Jesus says that again in the Sermon on the Mount. Is your heart focused on heaven? Do you think about the prize? Are you pressing toward the goal? Are you focused on the right thing? Because everything else is worthless. Doesn't matter as much as what's in this book. And you think, well, yeah, my heart's in the right place. Well, am I doubting God? James 1, 4 and 5, and in that passage, right along in there, he says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God who gives to all liberally, but let him ask in faith with no doubting. For the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea tossed about by the wind, and such a person should not expect to be heard by God. But maybe that's not the problem. Maybe like Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, we've had something in our life that we've wanted removed from us. It could be any sorts of things. There are so many things that we would rather not have to deal with, from great things to small things. Whatever it is, we pray to Him and it's not removed. Paul said in this particular passage that a messenger of Satan was sent to him. A thorn in the flesh was given to him to keep him from becoming conceited. 3 times I prayed to the Lord that it might be removed from me. But He told me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect through weakness. And so it could be that whatever is going on is helping me stay close to God in some way. It could be that whatever is happening to me is going to help me build others up, is going to help me encourage people, is going to help me preach the gospel. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. He has a plan. He has a plan for whatever situation you're in. If you feel alone, if you feel left out, if things aren't going the way you want to, maybe down the road it'll turn out differently than you thought it could. And the classic example is Joseph, right? You remember Joseph, the favorite of his father Jacob, who was given a coat of many colors, whose brothers threw him in a well, sold him into slavery, where he became the chief servant among the captain of the guard servants there in Egypt. when Potiphar was his name, Potiphar's wife came to him and tried to seduce him, and he refused her, and she accused him of raping her, and so he was thrown in prison. Don't you know that he was praying in that situation? And at the end of the book, after he interprets Pharaoh's dreams and he becomes the second highest in the entire land of Egypt, when his father dies and his brothers come to him thinking that he will kill them, he says to them, "Am I in the place of God?" In Genesis chapter 50. Now, I know what you meant for evil, but God meant it for good. That all these people that you see here are taken care of because of the position that I've been put in, because I was able to interpret Pharaoh's dreams. I was able to see the famine coming, and we were able to save up a bunch of crops and put away our resources and preserve the lives of this nation. I know what you meant for evil, but it turned out for good. And you know Romans 8:28, right? For we know that all things work together for good to those who are called according to His calling, to those that love the Lord. Do you love God? Lastly, it may not be the case that He has a particular plan in mind for this. Maybe He has a plan that will resolve the thing that you're suffering with, the issue that you want so bad to be removed from you. And maybe you have been living your life and keeping your life free of those things that would separate you from God. But maybe I haven't been persistent. And maybe I haven't been patient in prayer. We live in a I want it now society, right? Think of Amazon.com delivers packages 2 days after you order it, 1 day after you order it, sometimes the day you order it, sometimes minutes after you order it in some places. It's that fast. We have fast food where if it's not fast enough, we get a little bit cranky about it. We want it right now. Our internet speeds are getting faster and faster and faster. I'm used to 4.8 megabits per second. Because I live in the mountains and we're not quite sure what it is yet. Some of us still use cassette tapes in our cars. We want it now. We don't want to have to wait for it. I know the guys at Freed complain about the internet being 30 megabits per second. I'm like, this is great. What are you talking about? It reminds me of Habakkuk. If you've never read that book, go ahead and open up to Habakkuk. It's right along in the Minor Prophets. It comes right after Nahum. In the opening part of the book, he has a complaint before God, and he says, "How long shall I cry for help, and you will not hear? Or cry to you violence, and you will not save? Why do you make me see iniquity, and why do you idly look at wrong? Destruction and violence are before me, strife and contentions rise. So the law is paralyzed, and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverted." And you see the situation that Habakkuk's in. He believes in God. He knows that God is the one to save him, but he's confused. He's frustrated. And instead of asking why, he says, "How long are you going to let this go? How long are you going to let this continue on?" And God says to him, "You know, I'm working the work in your time that you would not understand if I told you, that you would not believe. I'm raising up the Babylonians. They're going to come to Israel. These are the last days of the kingdom of Israel, and they're going to come to Israel, and they will take care of the evildoers, the ones who are doing the wrong, the ones who are perverting justice. That's how this is going to be solved." But Habakkuk says, I can't see how you would use a nation so evil and so wicked to bring about your purpose. And in chapter 2, Habakkuk says, "I will wait for your answer." And God answers him and says, "Write the vision, make it plain on the tablet, so that he may run who reads it. For the still vision awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end. It will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay." In verse 4, "Behold, his soul is puffed up. It will not be upright within him, but the righteous shall live by faith. Be patient. And Jesus tells us in Luke chapter 18, be persistent. He tells a story of a widow who lived in a town where there was a judge who did not fear God nor respect man, but the widow kept coming to him and coming to him and coming to say, hey, I've got this problem. I want you to deliver me from my adversary. I've got this problem. He kept dismissing her and dismissing her and dismissing her and dismissing her. And finally, after so many times, he said to her, I neither fear God nor respect man, but because you come to me so many times, I will go ahead and take care of your situation. And Jesus says, how much more will a God who loves you and who cares for you answer you when you call to Him persistently and patiently and wait on Him and trust in Him and follow His words, His commandments, and His statutes. And this is Jesus talking about prayer. This is Jesus who knelt down in the garden 3 times and asked not to be hung on the cross. This is Jesus who time and time again prayed for the unity of the church. This is coming from the man that Paul exemplified when he prayed for the unity of the church, when he prayed for the congregations over and over and over again in each of his letters. Persistence, Jesus says. Be patient, be persistent. The director, well, I don't think he was the director. He was a teacher at the very least at the Tri-City School of Preaching down in Tennessee. His name was Wesley Simons, and I was watching a program that he did on YouTube where he said that our prayer life reflects our faith in God. So you say, I have faith in God, I believe in God, and I attend faithfully, I do the works that He wants me to, but how much do you pray? Have you given up on prayer because it just doesn't seem to work? You shouldn't. Romans 12:12 is the last verse on the outlines that were handed out today. It says, rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. Paul told us to pray without ceasing in 1 Thessalonians 5:16. Please, don't give up on God. He's here, and He wants to help you, and He's willing to help you. You just got to listen to Him for Him to listen to you. If there's something in your life that you want to shed and want to confess to the congregation and have them pray for you, we can do that and take care of that so that you can be right with God, so that your prayers can be heard by Him. If you need to be baptized, if you need encouragement from the church, prayers from the church, whatever your needs are, we hope you'll come as we all stand and sing.